In my previous life, my husband concealed the family history of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis (ALS) and refused to have a premarital physical examination. After we got married, my husband started to show symptoms and eventually became paralyzed and bad. When our son became an adult, he also got the disease. I took care of the two of them wholeheartedly for most of my life. Until my 60th birthday. I accidentally overheard my husband talking on the phone to Mandy. "Mandy, I've known I had this disease since I was a kid. I just couldn't bear to let you suffer. So I didn't marry you." Then my son spoke up. "Mom, Mandy, when are you coming? I miss you so much." In despair and breakdown, I was reborn. Seeing Mandy trying every means to marry Vince, I made room for the two of them overnight. One after being reborn and going back to high school, I went to recognize my relatives immediately. My biological father is the chairman of Shen Peng Group. In my previous life, my 80-year-old father came to find me when I was nearly 60. He told me that I was swapped by the nurse who delivered me when I was born. When the child was 6 years old and had an entrance physical examination, he found that the blood type didn't match. After further examination, he realized that the child he had been raising was not his biological one. For more than 50 years, he had been desperately looking for my whereabouts. And my biological mother had passed away, depressed because of this matter. The process of recognizing my relatives was very smooth. After all, my biological father had been looking for me for more than 10 years. I came to the downstairs of the headquarters of Shen Peng Group and explained the situation to the receptionist. The receptionist immediately arranged for someone to take me for a paternity test. After all, this had been going on for more than 10 years. And they were already very familiar with it. From the test to getting the report and then meeting my biological parents, the whole process took less than an hour. Different from the faltering in my previous life, the father in front of me was tall and strong. My mother held me carefully, and her makeup was ruined by crying. I gently patted my mother on the back and said, "Mom and Dad, I have to go back to school." My parents thought it would take some effort for me to recognize them. But they didn't expect me to accept all this so calmly. They sent me back to school with relief. As I passed by the school toilet, I happened to run into my husband Vince from my previous life. The surrounding classmates all burst into laughter. "Claire is here to check up on Vince again? Vince just went to the toilet. You don't have to follow him so closely, do you?" I glanced at them and said, "I'm not following him." Not only the classmates around, but even Vince didn't believe it. "Come on, Claire. Last time on the beach, Mandy really couldn't find anyone to help, so I helped her apply sunscreen. It's normal for classmates to help each other. Why do you have to make a big deal out of it?" When he mentioned this, I remembered that this really happened in my previous life. "So you helped her apply it all over her body, including private parts?" Vince looked quite self-righteous. "Of course. Sunscreen needs to be applied all over the body to be effective." Mandy ran over from nowhere and accidentally stepped on me. "Claire, I'm sorry. I asked Vince to help me apply sunscreen. You know, my skin is relatively delicate. It hurts a lot when exposed to the sun. I really couldn't find anyone to help, so I asked Vince to help me. If you want to blame someone, blame me. It has nothing to do with Vince." As she said this, her tears fell. Vince was very distressed and quickly wiped her tears. But Mandy's tears flowed more and more, and finally she ran out wronged. Vince glared at me and hurriedly chased after her. "It's all your fault. You're making a fuss over such a small thing." To the class bell rang, but the two of them didn't return to the classroom until much later. Looking at Vince, his clothes were in a mess. Then looking at Mandy, although her clothes were still relatively neat, there were faintly some mottled white unknown liquids on her school uniform pants. The classmates in the class witnessed this scene and began to make boisterous noises. Their eyes were shining with the light of watching a good show, and they all looked at me in unison. After all, everyone knew that I had been chasing Vince for 3 whole years. And just a few days ago, I finally became his girlfriend. But who could have imagined that now he was ambiguous with another girl? The good show that everyone was looking forward to didn't happen as expected. I kept my head down the whole time, focusing on the questions in my hand. not even giving them a single glance. Vince saw that I didn't react at all. His face darkened, and he returned to his seat with a sullen face. As soon as the class bell rang, I walked straight towards the playground. Today is the school sports meeting, and I signed up for the shot put competition. Vince didn't like the smell of sweat on me. In my previous life, I hardly exercised, and over time, my body became not so good. But even though my body was not good at that time, I still took good care of him who was bedridden. I always naively thought that in the world of love, as long as I gave enough, I would surely get a corresponding return. I was so stupid. From beginning to end, the only one I moved was myself. In this life, I am determined to regain my previous hobbies. Well, it starts with participating in the school sports meeting. Vince bought water for the athletes in the base camp and specially bought a cup of milk tea for Mandy. Mandy pretended to be angry and said, "Vince, you know I'm on a diet. And you still buy me milk tea. You're so mean." The number of bottles of water and cups of milk tea seemed to be carefully counted. Coincidentally, before it was my turn, they were just all distributed. Regarding this, I just calmly opened my thermos cup and took a few sips. It doesn't matter. I lived to a relatively old age in my previous life, and I've long lost interest in milk tea and ice water. Even in the hot summer, I'm used to carrying a thermos cup with me. Mandy seemed to notice me at this moment and said in a faint surprise, "Claire, why don't you drink the one Vince bought? Are you still angry?" Vince, upon hearing this, immediately roared at me impatiently, "Claire, have you had enough? You've been pulling a long face since yesterday. Who are you showing it to?" I slightly raised my head and looked at him in surprise. "You've been observing me?" When Vince heard this, he became so anxious that he jumped up and shouted, "Who observed you? I don't like you at all. It's you who insisted on pestering me." Although I already knew the result, when I heard him say these words with my own ears, my heart still felt like it was hit hard, and a sharp pain came. I slowly took a deep breath, trying to suppress the surging pain in my heart, and said in a calm voice as much as possible, "Fine, let out a low sigh. Let's break up." Upon hearing this, a glimmer of light flashed in Mandy's eyes. On Vince's face, "Hedlingsos feld land susher." A trace of panic flashed first, and then he shouted angrily, "Why do you get to decide when we're together and when we break up?" Before I could say anything more, Vince ran away angrily. 3. I really don't want to entangle with him anymore. I'll find an opportunity to make everything clear. At this moment, I'm only focused on the game in front of me. Although I haven't exercised much in recent years, I still have some of the foundation laid before high school. I actually got the 3rd place in the shot put event. Although it's just the 3rd place, for someone who hasn't exercised for a long time, this is undoubtedly a great affirmation and encouragement. Returning with the honor of winning an award, many classmates looked at me with more admiration and a new perspective. Vince, however, frowned, looking very unhappy, and walked towards me in big steps. Without saying a word, he stuffed a cup of milk tea into my arms. "Just a cup of milk tea? And you're making a fuss about breaking up with me? Don't say such nonsense in front of Mandy next time." She was so self-reproachful that she almost cried. After saying that, he turned around and left in a hurry without looking back. When I returned to the dormitory, the screen of my mobile phone suddenly lit up. It was a message from Mandy, with an audio attached. The content of the message was short and straightforward. "Claire, in this life, I will never give Vince to you." Seeing this message, I suddenly understood. No wonder Claire seemed to have completely changed recently. It turned out that she was also reborn. But in the previous life, she also knew about Vince's family inherited ALS. Mandy was reborn but still rushed to marry Vince. Either she really loves Vince, or although she was reborn, she only has memories before Vince got sick. But no matter which one it is, if she wants Vince, that's exactly what I want. I casually clicked on the audio, and I knew right away what it was. At the beginning of the audio, there was a blush-inducing sound. After a while, the intermittent conversation between the two also came slowly. "Baby, you're so great. I love you the most. Then you just now didn't want to break up with Claire? I was just having fun with her. I'm serious with you. I casually forwarded the audio to the class group and Mandy. The class group exploded immediately. For Mandy. You don't need to send me this kind of thing in the future. Vince and I have already broken up. High school life is boring. As soon as the audio was sent to the class group, it immediately caused a stir. Just a little hard. To show respect. Oh my god. This voice, t'adn't fulfill my style. This acting. I beg you to enter the adult industry. Pause the phone. Guys. I'll be away for a while. Vince kept sending me private messages, urging me to withdraw the message. Seeing that I didn't respond, he started to call me frantically. I simply turned off my phone and started doing math problems. I thought that the next day, the two of them would surely come to question me. But Vince looked indifferent. On the contrary, Mandy's eyes were red and swollen. And it was obvious that she had been crying for a long time. As for the other classmates, although they didn't say anything, the expressions on their faces, trying to hold back their laughter, clearly showed that they were secretly happy in their hearts, waiting to watch a good show. Of course, there were also some busboys who deliberately went up to Mandy and said, "Teacher Mandy, how amazing is Vince? Look. He made your eyes so red and swollen from crying." Mandy's face turned red instantly, and she ran out of the classroom crying. She didn't show up for the whole afternoon. This is good. I finally got some peace. But who knew that after the evening self-study, Vince actually stopped me at the classroom door. Because of what happened yesterday, Mandy cried all night and didn't close her eyes. I'm magnanimous and won't argue with you about those things. But you must apologize to Mandy. After all, she's a girl. And she's Vince's kind and cares about her reputation. When I heard this, I was both angry and amused. She cares about her reputation? Then why did she record the affair between you two and send it to me? Vince rolled his eyes at me and pouted, saying, "She's just a little girl with a temper. Why do you care about these things? Anyway, head in so Phil website. You have to apologize to her. And you also have to give her the guaranteed admission quota. As long as you do as I say, I'll compensate you for the remaining losses. Don't worry. Give the guaranteed admission quota to Mandy?" Hearing this, I immediately understood in my heart. No wonder they didn't give me much trouble today. They were waiting for me here. In my previous life, I gave up the guaranteed admission quota, thinking of letting Vince go. But he immediately gave that quota to Mandy. This time, no matter what, I can't give away my future to others because of anyone. Thinking of this, while Vince wasn't paying attention, I took off running and stepped on his foot hard as I ran. Where did you get your confidence from? Who cares about your compensation? 5 Since then, I continued to study as usual. All along, my academic performance has been quite excellent. Everyone knew that the guaranteed admission quota was a sure thing for me. However, when the list of guaranteed admissions came out, my name wasn't on it. I was extremely anxious and quickly went to ask the class teacher about the situation. The class teacher looked at me with a puzzled expression on his face when he saw how anxious I was. "Didn't you give it up yourself in the system? I was wondering why you suddenly changed your mind." I tried to hold back my panic, quickly took out my phone, and logged into the school's official website again. On the page, several big characters were particularly eye-catching. "Confirmed to give up." My hand started to tremble uncontrollably. Someone must be playing tricks behind my back. I looked at the guaranteed admission list again. And this time, I saw Mandy's name on it. In an instant, everything became crystal clear. I found Mandy on the playground. She was passionately kissing Vince at that time. I walked up quickly and roughly pulled Mandy away. Vince was startled by this sudden scene. When he saw it was me, a proud expression flashed across his face. "Claire, you said you didn't care about me." Before he could finish, I interrupted him mercilessly. "Mandy, did you mess with the guaranteed admission list?" Mandy's body trembled slightly, and she said timidly, "Claire, didn't you promise Vince that you would voluntarily give up the guaranteed admission quota? I saw that you've been studying so hard recently. I thought you didn't care about the guaranteed admission school and wanted to take the college entrance examination to get into University A. Right?" I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I gritted my teeth and asked word by word. So, Vince? Mandy? You tampered with my confirmation information for the guaranteed admission, right? Seeing that the matter had been exposed, Vince no longer tried to hide it. So what? Mandy is different from you. Mandy wants to continue studying. Anyway, heading till so my say. I'll marry you as soon as you graduate. What does it matter if you study or not since you have me? After hearing his shameless words, the anger in my heart completely exploded. And I cursed. Who wants to marry a scumbag like you? Who do you think you are? I didn't want to waste any more words with him and immediately called the police. 6. When Vince learned that I had called the police, he became extremely anxious. Claire, is it really necessary? I've already promised to marry you. What else do you want? Mandy beside him had her eyes red from crying. She sobbed and said, Claire, this guaranteed admission quota is really important to me. I won't fight with you over Vince anymore. Okay? Please forgive me this time. Fortunately, the police arrived very quickly. Before they could continue to act up, the police were already there. I handed the recording of our conversation just now to the police. Hearing the recording play, Vince and Mandy's faces turned pale. With conclusive evidence, they had nothing to argue about and just lowered their heads, remaining silent. The police interrogated them carefully and then took them away according to the law. After learning the truth of the matter, the school revoked Mandy's guaranteed admission quota. Since the final confirmation time of the system had passed, I still couldn't get the guaranteed admission qualification. At this time, there were only 4 months left until the college entrance examination. At this moment, I had no choice but to grit my teeth and study desperately. I don't have to thrive in the sunshine, but I must turn things around against the wind. After countless days and nights of hard work and unremitting efforts, I finally reaped the rewards. When I received the college admission notice, the emotions that had been pent up in my heart for a long time burst out like a flood breaking through a dike, and I could no longer control them. In my previous life, because I was muddle-headed, I gave away the guaranteed admission quota, didn't take the college entrance examination, and went to work in a hurry. At that time, I was ignorant and naively thought that Vince's promise to me was a lifelong reliance. Vince did marry me as promised later. At that time, I was so touched that I thought I was the happiest person in the world. When it came to the premarital physical examination, he prevaricated in every possible way. No matter how much I tried to persuade him, he firmly refused. Honey, the physical examination is crucial for you, me, and our future children. It's a sign of being responsible for our future. Why don't you want to do it? I was full of doubts and confusion at that time and tried to reason with him. You just don't trust me. If that's the case, we might as well not get married. He threw such an unreasonable sentence and turned to leave. In order to soothe his inexplicable emotions, I was really stupid enough to agree not to have a premarital physical examination. It was not until I was 60 years old that I learned the truth. He had long known that he had amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, so he was determined not to go for the physical examination. His approach to me from the beginning was a carefully planned hoax. He needed a free Annie who could take care of his daily life meticulously and help him bear the burden of life. He needed someone who was willing to endure hardships for the woman he loved. And I, this love-struck fool, happened to be the perfect candidate in his eyes. I gently stroked the college admission notice in my hand. The real touch made me truly feel that in this life, my destiny would be completely different from that in the previous life. I carefully put away the admission notice and then took a taxi to the graduation party. 7. As soon as I stepped into the hotel, I saw Vince and Mandy smiling all over their faces, making toasts everywhere. If you didn't know, you might think it was their wedding banquet. I gently nudged my roommate sitting next to me with my elbow. What are they up to? My roommate leaned slightly closer to my ear and said, I heard that someone in our school was admitted to University A. Everyone guesses it should be one of them. I'm annoyed just looking at them. I really don't understand how University A could accept such people. I'm really disillusioned with famous schools. The study committee member also came over and chimed in. The college entrance examination only screens out poor students. Not scumbags. Just let it go. By the way, which school did Claire get into? The classmates around knew about the incident of Mandy tampering with my guaranteed admission information. And they didn't dare to rashly ask me how I did in the exam. In case I didn't do well. It would be like deliberately poking someone in the heart. Since the study committee member had spoken, everyone pricked up their ears, waiting curiously for my answer. I was just about to speak when someone shouted loudly, "Chairman Zhao is here." Chairman Zhao is the person in charge of Shun Peng Group and is well known in the business world. At the same time, he is a shareholder of our high school and has considerable say in school affairs. Of course, he is also my father. Everyone stood up to greet him. But he ignored the greetings around him and just kept looking around. The anxiety in his eyes seemed to indicate that he was eagerly looking for someone. I knew in my heart that he was looking for me. So, I quickly waved vigorously at him. My father's eyes lit up immediately. He quickened his pace and came straight to the empty seat next to me and sat down. As the saying goes, one gets nervous when approaching home. Sitting next to me, my father seemed at a loss for a moment, not knowing where to start. He just silently picked up his chopsticks and kept picking up food for me. Seeing this scene, others couldn't help but look at each other in surprise. Their eyes were full of doubt and curiosity, secretly guessing when I had become so familiar with Chairman Zhao. Some people were so jealous that their eyes turned red. My father got up to answer a phone call because of something urgent. As soon as he left, Mandy said in a sarcastic tone, "I knew it. How could anyone not be interested in Vince? It turns out she's found a rich backer. Look at his age. He's old enough to be her father. She really isn't picky." Although Vince didn't say anything, the angry expression on his face clearly showed his agreement with Mandy's words. I just found their words funny and didn't bother to argue with them. Anyway, my father would be back soon. And then he would naturally explain my relationship with him to everyone. Why should I waste my breath here? Not long after, my father came back from the phone call. Just like before, he sat down and continued to lower his head to pick up food for me, as if no one else was around. At this time, the principal cleared his throat and said loudly, "Students, there is a very outstanding student in our class who was admitted to University A. This is a great honor for our school since its establishment. Let's give a warm round of applause to congratulate this outstanding student." However, none of the students present clapped. They just sat quietly. And the atmosphere became a bit awkward for a while. Only Vince and Mandy clapped vigorously. Their applause was particularly prominent in the slightly quiet space. Vince clapped while shouting at the top of his voice, "Good. Good. This student is really outstanding." The principal standing on the stage felt embarrassed. He frowned and raised his voice, saying, "What's wrong with everyone? Where are the applause?" Under the principal's urging, some perfunctory applause finally rang out. Vince was still very enthusiastic in his support. "Principal, this student is really the first in our school's history. Does the school have any special rewards?" Mandy also quickly chimed in beside him. "I heard that the school next door gives each student who is admitted to University A reward of 100 yuan. Our school shouldn't be less than that, right?" The principal, who had been slightly relieved because someone was actively responding, turned livid when he heard Mandy mention the 100 yuan reward amount. It would be better if she just shut up. The principal could only force a smile and say, "Don't worry, students. There will definitely be a bonus. However, the specific amount still needs to be discussed at a subsequent school meeting. Please be patient." My father, seeing that the principal was in an awkward situation, immediately spoke up to help him out. "Don't worry, everyone. We'll see how much funding the school can get at that time. If it's not enough, our board of directors will make up the amount for this student. It will definitely not be less than 100 yuan. You can rest assured." Upon hearing this, the surrounding classmates didn't have any special reaction. It was still quiet. On the contrary, Vince and Mandy were laughing so hard that they could hardly straighten up. Seeing how happy they were laughing, the principal was pleased and spoke again. "Students, I'll take this opportunity to give you one last lesson. On the journey of life, We should be happy to cheer and clap for others' success. Just like Vince and Mandy. When Claire was admitted to University A, they were happier than anyone else. This kind of open-mindedness is worthy of all of us to learn from. When Vince and Mandy heard this, they were stunned and exclaimed in unison. Wasn't it Vince Mandy who was admitted to University A? No. It wasn't. The smiles on Vince and Mandy's faces didn't disappear but were transferred to the classmates' faces. This time, all the classmates in the audience cheered. Goodness! It was Claire who was admitted to University A. I knew it. Those two didn't look like they could get into University A. Exactly. I didn't even want to clap just now. Hearing the deafening applause. The principal was so moved that he shed tears. His last lesson wasn't in vain after all. Just then, let out a low sigh. My father slowly stood up, scanned the audience with his eyes, and then cleared his throat. Everyone waited quietly for what was to come. Taking this opportunity, I'd like to explain something to everyone. Claire is my child who I'd been separated from for many years. We just recognized each other some time ago. Thank you, all the school leaders, teachers, and classmates, for your care and concern for Claire over the years. Today, it's my treat. Order whatever you like. The classmates were so shocked that they couldn't speak. It took them a while to react. And they were all very happy for me. Of course. While some were happy, others were sad. I was waiting for my father to pick me up from the garage at the hotel entrance. Vince ran over and questioned. You're Chairman Zhao's daughter. Why didn't you tell me such a big thing? I just found it funny. Why should I tell you? Would it make any difference if I did? Would you leave Mandy and fall in love with me immediately? Your love is too cheap and meaningless to me. Vince wasn't convinced and grabbed my hand. You've always liked me, right? Why did you suddenly stop? I tried to shake off his hand hard, but I couldn't. Suddenly, a figure rushed over and started beating Vince. It took me a while to see who it was. It was Ethan. Ethan was the child who was swapped with me by the nurse at birth. He was a boy and was found not to be from the Ethan family during the entrance physical examination at the age of 6. Because he was a boy, everyone thought the child from the Ethan family who was swapped was also a boy, which added a lot of difficulty to the Ethan family's search for their child all along. The Ethan family's attitude towards Eve and had always been contradictory. On the one hand, they thought he was enjoying the life that should have been mine and didn't give him a good look. On the other hand, they thought he was just an innocent child. Since I returned to the Ethan family, Ethan had been very well behaved and never caused me any trouble. So, because he didn't stir up trouble, everyone tacitly allowed him to stay in the Ethan family. Now that he was willing to stand up for me and beat Vince, I was really a bit surprised. Not long after I returned to the Ethan family, Vince came to the door. Claire, I was wrong before. I let you down. This time, let me pursue you properly. I'll treat you as well as you treated me before. Looking at his bruised face saying these words, I felt nauseous. Just as I was about to curse, I was interrupted by his phone ringing. Mandy's voice came from the phone. Vince. My stomach hurts so much. I'm in the hospital now. Can you come and accompany me? Vince was very hesitant. I waved my hand impatiently, motioning for him to go to the hospital quickly. I didn't want to see him for another second. Before leaving, Vince said reluctantly, Claire, when I come back from the hospital, I'll take you to watch a movie. You wait for me at home obediently. I didn't respond. I just reached out and slammed the door shut. Then, what out a wow fry? I immediately told housekeeper you. Don't let Vince and Mandy in from now on. I don't want to see them again. Understand? After giving the order, I started idly scrolling through my WeChat moments. While scrolling, I found someone me. Out of curiosity, I clicked in and saw that it was Mandy. In the photo was Mandy's seemingly pale and slender hand with a needle inserted in it. Her hand was gently placed on Vince's hand, and Vince seemed to be too tired and was asleep beside the hospital bed. The photo was accompanied by a caption, got into the hospital due to menstrual pain. He insisted on staying with me. I rolled my eyes in disdain. Just as I was about to block her, I heard a snicker from the side. I looked up and saw Ethan approaching with a playful smile on his face. Sis. Do you know this Mandy? Yeah. She's my classmate. As soon as Ethan heard this, he immediately got excited and started chattering away to me. I have a brother who is a well-known playboy in the circle. He has countless women around him. And Mandy is one of them. Every time my brother finishes with a woman, he pours chili oil into the condom, for fear that some woman will secretly take his semen to have a baby. That's why Mandy is in the hospital this time. That she actually posted on Moments that she was in the hospital due to menstrual pain. Isn't that funny? I was speechless for a moment. It's quite laughable. 11 I didn't see Vince throughout the whole summer vacation. It was when I went to college that I saw Mandy. As soon as she saw me, she started cursing. Claire. You persistent woman. How dare you seduce my boyfriend? Vince is drunk and always keeps shouting your name. After saying that, she rushed towards me, trying to hit me. But I dodged easily with a quick movement. Then, let out a low sigh. It was my turn to rush forward and give her a good beating. What does it have to do with me that he shouts my name when he's drunk? If there's a next time, it won't be as simple as me taking action. I've been keeping up with sports these years, and my physical condition is pretty good. After this fight, I wasn't hurt at all. I waved my hand gently, and the bodyguard not far away immediately understood and quickly came to take Mandy away. Not long after, the news of Vince and Mandy's marriage came. I heard it was because Mandy was pregnant. Vince even sent me an invitation. I just took a casual look at it, and then threw it into the trash can. 12 later. I was successfully recommended for postgraduate study. After finishing my postgraduate studies, I went overseas to pursue a doctorate. After returning to China, with the support of my family, I founded a company. The next time I saw Vince was in a coffee shop. He was in a wheelchair at that time. I was surprised. I didn't expect him to get sick earlier in this life than in the previous one. His eyes fell on me. His eyes slightly red, and his lips trembling slightly. It seemed that he had thousands of words on the tip of his tongue. But in the end, he just managed to utter with difficulty, "Long time no see. President Claire." I nodded slightly and replied calmly, "Long time no see, Vince." Just then, a figure flashed, and someone started scolding and hitting Vince mercilessly. "Let you run around. Let you run. I just went to do my hair for a while. And you disappeared. So you came out to flirt around. Look at what you look like now. A cripple. Who would fancy you? Only I'm kind-hearted and will never leave you." Vince hugged his head with both hands, his body trembling slightly, not daring to make a sound. This voice was so familiar. It seemed to be Mandy, who had a furious expression on her face, instantly changed to a beaming smile when her eyes met mine. Oh, it's President Claire. I thought it was someone else. I often see you on TV. You're really a model of a successful female entrepreneur. You're so well preserved. You look exactly the same as in high school. Mandy had changed a lot. She had gained a little weight, and her speech had become much more sophisticated. My eyes inadvertently fell on a little boy around 6 or 7 years old beside her. The child was cute and well behaved, standing there quietly. "Is this your child?" "Yeah, hadn't fulfilled my inside. Son, cutting fulfilled my inside. Quickly say hello to President Claire." Although Vince and Mandy were a mess, the child seemed nice. I casually mentioned, "Take the child for a physical examination too. If he really inherits his father's disease, early detection can lead to early prevention." But Mandy waved her hand inferiorly, still smiling. "Don't worry. My child has nothing to do with Vince. He's perfectly healthy." I was shocked in my heart but didn't show it on my face. I glanced at Vince seemingly casually. He was lowering his head, his hands tightly gripping the armrests of the wheelchair, with the veins on the back of his hands slightly protruding. Anyway, this had nothing to do with me anymore. I got up and prepared to leave. Mandy was still enthusiastic and said to me with a smile, "Come and visit me when you have time." 13 Stepping out of the coffee shop, the fresh air blew towards me. Ethan had already parked the car steadily by the roadside. Seeing me come out, he quickly got out of the car, greeted me with a big smile, and opened the back seat door for me. After I got in and sat down, He didn't start the car immediately. Instead, he turned his head and looked curiously at the coffee shop, his face full of a gossipy expression. Sis, gah. That Mandy is your classmate, right? Let me tell you. When you just entered college. She was already pregnant. Do you know who the father of the child is? It was a rich man in his 50s. After she got pregnant, she didn't tell anyone. Instead, she secretly found a place to give birth, planning to ask the rich man for child support in the future. However, when she went to his place, the rich man had suddenly died of illness not long ago. At that time, all of the rich man's inheritance had already been inherited by his wife. Of course, the rich man's wife wouldn't recognize Mandy's child. She directly had Mandy and the child thrown out mercilessly. I was already used to Ethan knowing such detailed inside information. He didn't have any other hobbies on weekdays. He was just particularly fond of gossip news. In our circle, he was like a know-it-all. At the moment, he was looking at me expectantly, with an expression like a primary school student waiting for the teacher's praise. I rolled my eyes at him helplessly and asked impatiently, "Then what?" Mandy married Vince with the child. How could he be willing? Ethan was waiting for me to ask this. He excitedly raised his voice and said, "Vince didn't know the child wasn't his." Seeing the puzzled expression on my face, Ethan became even more proud and continued to talk animatedly. After Mandy was kicked out by the rich man's wife, she immediately went to Vince. She cried to Vince, saying that she loved him so much that she was afraid he wouldn't agree to have the child. So she didn't tell him even after getting pregnant and secretly gave birth to the child. However, as the child grew up, he didn't look like Vince at all. And not even much like Mandy. Vince became suspicious and secretly did a paternity test. Only then did he find out that the child wasn't his. He got angry at that time and wanted to divorce Mandy. But Mandy wouldn't agree. She pestered him. And they couldn't get divorced at all. So, they quarreled every day. And the house was in chaos. After a fierce argument, Vince suddenly fainted. He was sent to the hospital for an examination. And it turned out to be amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. From then on, he could no longer stand up. I thought to myself, could it be that the excessive emotional fluctuations caused his illness to occur earlier? Later, the news about the two of them came from a local news report. The news said that a man with paralyzed legs in a certain community, unable to bear his wife's daily beatings, finally chose to commit suicide by burning charcoal. All 3 members of their family died from carbon monoxide poisoning. I shook my head, feeling mixed emotions in my heart. After a moment, I collected my thoughts and refocused on my work. The end of the full text.